Monday arrives with a work deadline. Before breakfast, the family needs an answer. By midday, a ministry commitment is asking for preparation. Messages are accumulating. Errands cannot be postponed. And that personal goal you promised to pursue is waiting again. Everything is competing for the same limited hours, and almost everything can defend its right to be there. That is what makes this problem difficult. We are not looking at a calendar crowded with obvious irresponsibility. These are good obligations, necessary obligations, worthy obligations. You are working, serving, helping, responding, providing, planning, and trying to grow. Yet when the week ends, you can have completed many duties and still feel that you never truly governed the week. You were present everywhere, but settled nowhere. You were moving constantly, but who decided the direction? Here is the controlling question. Why can a sincere, busy believer fulfill many duties and still feel that life is being governed by interruption? Because goodness does not establish order. Write that into your thinking. A thing can be good without being first. A responsibility can be legitimate without possessing unlimited authority. When every legitimate demand is permitted to behave like the highest demand, limited time becomes oppressive. The schedule has contents, but it has no government. Motion is not direction. Activity is not fruitfulness. A crowded schedule is not necessarily an ordered life. You may need better planning, yes, but planning alone cannot solve a problem of priority. A calendar cannot tell you what should rule it. It can only reveal what has been ruling it. The sampled content repeatedly gives attention to fear, worry, stress, anxiety, and the desire for peace. That observation does not prove that calendar pressure causes those conditions, and we will not pretend that it does. But it does show why this conversation matters. People are not merely asking how to fit in one more task. They are longing for a life that is no longer pulled apart by competing claims. So we are going to make this practical. We will define kingdom priority in operational terms. We will expose the rule currently governing your calendar. We will build a repeatable filter for obligations, opportunities, and competing roles. We will audit the week, write a governing statement, and return to this packed calendar to see what changes when hierarchy is restored without pretending every responsibility must disappear. Say this provisionally. Urgency may report a need, but urgency must not become the ruler that decides everything. Kingdom purpose must decide what receives time, attention, and sacrifice. Now, if priority is the missing element, we must ask the question every ordered life requires. What does priority actually do? Priority is the principle that decides order. It determines what comes before, what receives protection, and what must yield when two claims cannot both be satisfied. Notice, priority is not merely what you admire. It is what governs your decisions under pressure. Preference says, I would like this. Priority says, this must regulate what I choose. Preference expresses desire. Priority establishes rank. Now define kingdom purpose operationally. Kingdom purpose is the governing divine intention under which every legitimate part of life receives its proper place. Work belongs under it. Family belongs under it. Service, stewardship, rest, and personal development belong under it. The kingdom is not another compartment competing with those responsibilities. It is the government that orders them. This is why seeking the kingdom first does not mean performing one religious activity before every other activity, as though the whole principle was satisfied by chronology. First means governing rank. It means the controlling purpose interprets the value, timing, measure, and direction of everything else. You can begin an activity early and still give it no governing authority. First is not merely what happens earliest. First is what regulates the whole. Now let us rescue another word from confusion: urgency. Urgency is information about timing, pressure, or an approaching consequence. It tells you that something may require prompt attention. It does not prove that the thing possesses supreme importance. Urgency is a messenger, not a monarch. Hear the report, but do not surrender the government. And responsibility must also be defined carefully. A responsibility is a legitimate duty attached to a role, a promise, a stewardship, or a consequence you are obligated to address. Responsibilities are not disposable simply because they are inconvenient. Kingdom order is not permission to neglect your family, break your word, abandon your work, or rename poor stewardship as spiritual freedom. Responsibilities must be ordered, not casually abandoned. Can you hear the distinctions? Priority versus preference. Government versus impulse. Responsibility versus mere access. Purpose versus pressure. Someone having access to you does not automatically create a duty for you. Something feeling intense does not automatically make it first. Something being enjoyable does not automatically make it aligned. Something being difficult does not automatically make it wrong. Write this compact principle. Whatever is first becomes the interpreter of everything that follows. Say it again, because we will use it later. Whatever is first interprets everything else. If pressure is first, every interruption looks like a command. If approval is first, every request feels like an obligation. If kingdom purpose is first, every role must answer to a higher order. That does not make your responsibilities disappear. It tells each responsibility where it belongs, how much authority it possesses, and when another claim must yield. Now the terms are stable, but definitions become real only when they face competition. So next we must examine what happens when several good roles arrive together, and each one tries to become first. Listen to the voices when several good roles arrive at once. Work says, everything you do here affects your future. Family says, if you love us, you must always be immediately available. Ministry says, every need you can meet must be your calling. Personal ambition says, if you delay, everyone else will move ahead of you. None of those voices sounds evil. That is precisely why they are powerful. The conflict is rarely between good and evil. More often, it is good against good when no agreed order exists. And when good things have no governing order, each good thing begins campaigning for absolute control. Then hidden rules take over. The loudest person wins, the newest request wins, the most visible consequence wins, the opportunity that makes you feel important wins. Or guilt enters the room, holds no discussion, examines no evidence, and announces the verdict. So let us make this personal. Who can interrupt you without permission? What do you protect first when the day becomes crowded? 2. Which request makes you feel valuable because it confirms the identity you want others to see? What repeatedly receives, whatever time, energy, and attention remain? Do not answer too quickly. Your stated values may give one answer while your repeated choices give another. Some of us treat every notification as though it arrived carrying official orders. The device makes a sound, and suddenly the entire purpose of the day must stand aside. We interrupt the conversation to examine the interruption, only to discover that the emergency was a discount, an update, or someone responding with one word. It is humorous until you recognize the training taking place. Repeated interruption teaches your life to obey whatever arrives last. That is the danger. The last request becomes the first command. The strongest emotion becomes the final authority. The role connected to your deepest insecurity receives exemption from examination. You do not ask whether it belongs, whether now is the right time, or what it will displace. You simply obey. A legitimate role becomes a rival government when it demands unlimited time or refuses evaluation. Work is honorable, but it cannot be permitted to consume every relationship. Family is precious, but love is not proven by surrendering to every preference immediately. Ministry matters, but capacity does not make every need your assignment. Growth is valuable, but ambition cannot define every delay as failure. This is not an argument for caring less. It is an argument for governing what you care about. Kingdom order does not make family, employment, ministry, health, or rest unimportant. It protects them by preventing any one role from consuming the purpose of all the others. Now say the principle with greater understanding. Urgency may speak, but purpose must decide. Urgency can describe the pressure. Guilt can reveal an emotion. Visibility can expose a consequence. Identity can explain why an opportunity attracts you. But none of them has earned the right to govern merely by appearing. So what has actually been deciding your week? If pressure cannot be trusted with the final word, every arriving demand needs a better test. Before it competes for your time, it must first prove its alignment with the purpose governing your life. What changes when kingdom purpose, rather than urgency, decides what receives your time? The first change is not that requests stop arriving. The first change is that arrival no longer equals authority. Pressure can knock, but purpose answers the door. This is what first means in practice. The governing priority interprets every request before the request rearranges your life. An opportunity is not accepted merely because it is good. It is not accepted merely because it is available, profitable, spiritual, admired, or difficult for someone else to fill. Those qualities may deserve attention, but none of them settles the decision. So install the first filter. What relationship does this demand have to governing purpose? There are 4 possible findings. The demand may directly advance that purpose. It may enable a responsibility that carries that purpose, even if the task itself appears ordinary. It may distract from the assignments already entrusted to you, or it may contradict an established obligation by requiring you to neglect what you have already promised to protect. Do not rush past those distinctions. Ask the demand 3 questions. What purpose do you serve? Which entrusted role do you belong to? What existing responsibility will you strengthen or weaken? Suppose you receive an invitation to participate in something worthy. The people are sincere. The opportunity fits your values. You could make a meaningful contribution, and accepting it would even look admirable. But it arrives during a period when your present responsibilities already require concentrated attention. Now watch the false choice. You may think, either I must call this invitation bad or I must say yes. No, kingdom order gives you another answer. This is good, but it is not mine now. That is not condemnation. That is discernment. You do not have to reduce the value of an opportunity in order to refuse its control. You can honor the purpose it serves while recognizing that accepting it would weaken a responsibility you are already carrying. A worthy request can be aligned in principle and still be poorly timed in practice. But listen carefully. Alignment does not complete the decision. It only earns the demand further evaluation. Something may fit kingdom purpose and still not belong to you. It may belong to you, but not in this season. It may be timely, but beyond your present capacity. The first filter asks whether the demand deserves consideration. Later questions must examine ownership, timing, and cost. This is why applied teaching matters. The supplied research indicates continuing interest in core kingdom themes and stronger examples for framing those themes through daily practice. That observation guides the teaching toward usable decisions. It does not validate theology through viewing performance. Popularity cannot establish truth. It can only show where practical explanation may help people act on what they profess. Now rehearse the filter. Say it slowly. Good is not automatically first. Available is not automatically assigned. Urgent is not automatically governing. Purpose must interpret pressure before pressure is permitted to reorganize the life. Pause. Identify what the demand serves. Locate the role to which it belongs. Examine what your yes would strengthen and what it would weaken. Then refuse the automatic commitment. That filter tells you what should matter. But there is another witness waiting, one less impressed by your intentions. Your calendar records what has actually received first place. Now we turn from the demands arriving at the door to the decisions already made. You cannot reset an order you have never made visible. So take out a real calendar, not the week you wish you lived, not the week you plan to create after everything settles down, but one normal 7-day period. The calendar cannot reveal every motive. It cannot measure love, faithfulness, or spiritual maturity by itself. But repeated patterns do reveal repeated allocations. They show what you protect when pressure rises, what you continually postpone, and which responsibilities receive no place until something else is finished. Begin by sorting the week into 5 categories. First, fixed responsibilities. Employment hours, family obligations, appointments, and duties already attached to your roles. Second, chosen commitments, meetings, projects, service, social activity, and opportunities you accepted. Third, maintenance and administration, travel, household care, errands, correspondence, and the ordinary work required to keep life functioning. Fourth, recovery and renewal, sleep, rest, reflection, recreation, and practices that restore your capacity. Fifth, unplanned leakage, time lost through avoidable delay, unfocused browsing, unnecessary switching, or interruptions that were never consciously admitted into the schedule. Do not merely color the categories and admire your organization. Mark every block by the role or purpose it serves. Work, family, ministry, stewardship, recovery, personal development. Then record recurring interruptions separately. If you bury 20 interruptions inside one broad block called work, you will miss the pattern that kept you from actually working. Now make 3 marks. Circle what remains protected even when the week becomes difficult. Underline what is repeatedly postponed. Place a question mark beside every commitment whose purpose you cannot clearly state. Look at those marks. What you circle has functional rank. What you underline may be living on promises without receiving provision. What you question may be occupying space simply because it arrived, continued, or became familiar. But time is only half of the audit. Examine attention. You may assign an hour to your family while giving your mind to work. You may schedule recovery while remaining absorbed in messages. You may sit at your desk while worry spends your attention somewhere else. The body can be present in one role while the mind is serving another. Therefore, ask not only, where was I? Ask, what possessed my attention while I was there? Now interpret without accusing yourself carelessly. Sleep is not automatically unspiritual. Travel is not automatically waste. Household care, employment, administration, and recovery may directly support faithful stewardship. The issue is not whether an activity looks impressive. The issue is what purpose it serves, what measure it occupies, and what it repeatedly displaces. Ask 3 questions. What does this week say is first? Which role is receiving more than its rightful share? Which essential responsibility survives only on leftovers? The supplied E12 supports this written, participatory form of self-examination. It does not decide the outcome before you examine your own week. Your marks must reveal your pattern. So become quiet now. Keep every circle, underline, and question mark. We will use them to decide what stays, moves, is shared, or is released. Then write one honest sentence. My present calendar is being governed primarily by... Now take the items you questioned in the audit and submit each one to 4 questions. A governing principle changes behavior only when it produces a consistent decision. Here is the sequence: ownership, alignment, timing, and cost. A demand does not become a commitment merely because it reaches you. It becomes a commitment only after it survives examination. Question 1. Is this genuinely mine? Does it arise from a role entrusted to you, a promise you explicitly made, or a consequence you are truly responsible to address? Or is it resting on another person's expectation that you never actually accepted? Need does not automatically establish ownership. Access does not create assignment. Someone may strongly desire your involvement without possessing the authority to define your duty. Question 2. What governing purpose or legitimate responsibility does this serve? Do not invent a new standard here. Use the first filter. Identify the purpose, locate the role, and examine what the demand would strengthen or weaken. If you cannot explain its relationship to kingdom purpose or an entrusted responsibility, pressure has not earned a place in the calendar. Question 3. Is this for now, for a scheduled, later time, or for another season? Eventual value does not create immediate priority. Something can belong to you and still not belong to today. Timing is not rejection. Scheduling a worthy responsibility for the proper period may be the very act that protects it from a careless, under-resourced yes. Question 4. What will this yes cost? If you accept, what existing commitment must move, weaken, or disappear? Every yes spends more than time. It spends attention, energy, preparation, recovery, and availability. Name the displaced commitment before you agree. If you refuse to identify the cost, you are not making a decision, you are concealing one. After the 4 questions, assign one honest action. Accept the demand and protect it. Schedule it explicitly. Share or delegate it with consent and clarity, or decline it without contempt. Delegation is not abandonment. You cannot throw your responsibility onto an unwilling person and call that order. State what is being transferred, confirm agreement, provide what is needed, and keep the accountable owner clear. Now test the question items from your audit. A ministry request may be aligned and compassionate, yet compassion does not prove personal assignment. An extra work opportunity may represent wise stewardship, or it may be identity-driven accumulation, asking for more simply because more feels significant. A family need may genuinely belong to your role and require prompt care, but real responsibility is not the same as unlimited availability to every preference. A personal goal may support purposeful development, or it may function as escape, comparison, or vanity. Ask all 4 questions in every case. Do not excuse ministry from cost, work from alignment, family from timing, or personal ambition from ownership. Install this rule for every non-emergency commitment. Make no calendar promise until ownership, alignment, timing, and cost have been named. A pause is not indifference. It is the space in which purpose is permitted to decide. You may say, "Let me examine my existing responsibilities before I answer." That sentence can protect several faithful commitments from one impulsive agreement. The supplied E12 supports using practical contrasts, repetition, and participation to make this framework memorable. It does not predetermine your answer. So repeat the order aloud. Is it mine? What does it serve? Is it now? What will it cost? Purpose decides. The calendar records. Every yes carries a cost. This system can classify one arriving demand, but life contains enduring roles that cannot simply be declined. We must now learn how one governing purpose orders work: family, ministry, rest, and growth across changing seasons. The 4 questions must now govern more than isolated requests. They must govern the architecture of your life. And the first correction is this: order does not mean giving identical hours to every role. Equal time is not always possible, and it is not always faithful. Order means giving appropriate attention according to responsibility, season, consequence, and purpose. Picture a role map. Place kingdom purpose at the center. Around it, place work, family, ministry, health, rest, learning, and personal goals. None belongs outside the government. None is an independent kingdom. Each is a governed expression of one purpose. Many responsibilities can coexist when none is permitted to declare itself supreme. Now examine every role in 3 parts. What responsibilities are non-transferable? What commitments are negotiable? What is the minimum faithful attention this role requires in the present season? Your role may contain duties only you can fulfill, activities someone else can share, and preferences that can be postponed without neglect. Maturity knows the difference. Present season matters. A temporary work deadline may require unusual concentration. A newborn may rightly alter sleep, availability, and routine. Illness, caregiving, study, or recovery may change how the week is allocated. That change does not necessarily mean the governing priority has changed. Faithful order can flex without collapsing. A season may adjust the measure given to a role without granting that role permanent control. Suppose a family event, a work deadline, and a ministry invitation arrive together. Do not automatically choose the category you consider most spiritual, most profitable, or most emotionally demanding. Ask, what is truly mine? What does each claim serve? What must happen now? What will each decision cost? Perhaps the family event represents a promise that cannot be restored once missed. Perhaps the deadline carries a consequence you are responsible to prevent. Perhaps the ministry invitation is aligned but can be shared, shortened, or scheduled differently. The answer is not found by favoring a category. It is found by governing the conflict. And when an unavoidable demand displaces another responsibility, practice repair. Communicate before silence becomes injury. Reschedule what can still be honored. Restore the attention that was temporarily withdrawn. Do not pretend that because the interruption was legitimate, no cost occurred. Ordered people acknowledge displacement and repair it responsibly. Apply the same judgment to labor and rest. Labor is not automatically faithfulness merely because it is strenuous. Rest is not automatically avoidance merely because it stops production. Either can serve purpose, and either can become escape. Responsibility, season, and consequence must interpret both. Now answer plainly. Which role is presently overreaching? Which role is surviving on leftovers? Keep those 2 answers. They will become a visible reallocation when you complete the reset. Return to the crowded week. It does not have to become empty. The work may remain. Family still requires care. Ministry, recovery, learning, and ordinary maintenance may all remain. but they no longer arrive as competing governments. They receive rank, measure, protection, and limits under one governing purpose. You can understand that order and still violate it. Why? Because the next request may carry guilt and disappointment may feel like failure. We must now confront the emotional force that tries to make every truthful boundary look unloving. Here is the law you cannot escape. Every yes spends something. It spends time, attention, energy, capacity, or relational trust. You may consider the cost before agreeing or discover it afterward, but the cost will still be paid. And often it is paid by a responsibility that never entered the conversation. This is why an unexamined yes is not automatically loving. You may please the person asking while quietly betraying a promise already made. You may accept one more opportunity and then offer exhausted attention to the people you agreed to protect. A truthful no can protect a faithful yes, but guilt does not like that sentence. Guilt often disguises itself as guidance. Someone appears disappointed, and disappointment feels like proof that you have done wrong. It is not proof. Their emotion deserves compassion, but it cannot determine your assignment. Compassion is not unlimited availability. Service is not the need to be needed. Opportunity is not assignment. Ask yourself plainly, am I saying yes because this belongs to my purpose, or because refusal would disturb the image I want others to hold? That question may expose why certain requests feel impossible to decline. You are not only protecting the relationship, you may be protecting a reputation for being dependable, generous, spiritual, capable, or indispensable. Then approval begins governing the calendar, while purpose receives the explanation afterward. The supplied E2 documents the prominence of worry, stress, anxiety, and the desire for peace in the sample content. That prominence helps explain why this pressure deserves careful attention. It does not mean a reordered calendar will cure emotional distress or clinical conditions. The promise here is narrower and more honest. A truthful decision process can remove the confusion created by commitments you never responsibly examined. So speak with clarity and respect. I cannot accept this in the present season without neglecting a responsibility I have already agreed to protect. If another time is honest, offer a specific time. If a handoff is authorized, connect the request to a willing and capable person without abandoning accountability. If neither option is truthful, say no clearly. Do not decorate refusal until it sounds like possible agreement. And be careful. Kingdom language must never become a weapon for dismissing dependence, contracts, debts, or promises. Purpose does not excuse neglect. It orders legitimate responsibilities and prevents new pressure from violating them. Relief does not mean everyone approves. Relief means your decision can stand in the light without contempt, deception, or concealed cost. Urgency reports, guilt protests, but purpose decides. Now take the role that has been overreaching and the role that has been neglected. You are ready to turn that discovery into one written rule and one visible change in the week. Return now to the crowded calendar. The obligations may still be numerous. The work remains, the relationships remain, the service remains, and ordinary maintenance still requires attention. But everything written there no longer possesses equal authority, and every new demand no longer receives automatic access. What arrives must now be governed. Write the statement, because kingdom purpose governs my life. I will give first protection to my present responsibilities, test new demands by ownership, alignment, timing, and cost, and release commitments that violate that order. Now make it yours. Name the responsibilities that require protection in this season. Name the pattern you must release. Perhaps approval has been directing your agreements. Perhaps work has exceeded its rightful measure. Perhaps recovery, family, or purposeful growth has repeatedly been postponed. Do not write a statement so general that it cannot confront your actual week. A rule that governs must be specific enough to correct you. Then make one change immediately. Protect one neglected responsibility with an actual block of time. Move one commitment whose value is real but whose timing is wrong. Share one task that can be responsibly transferred. Or decline one demand that never belonged to your assignment. Choose one. Record it now. The reset becomes real when conviction changes an appointment, an agreement, or an allocation. Schedule a review 7 days from today. You are not promising instant perfection. You are establishing a repeatable government. At the review, ask, what received protection? What pressure bypassed the filter? What consequence appeared? What must be repaired or adjusted? Learn from the week, correct the order, and continue. The Supplied E12 supports this movement from written self-examination to verbal agreement and immediate reprioritization. Your calendar must supply the personal answer. Now say it aloud. Purpose will decide. Responsibility will be honored. Urgency will be evaluated. My calendar will record the order. That is the change in the opening week. It may remain full, but it is no longer without rank. Competing demands have become decisions rather than masters. The goal was never an empty life. The goal is a governed life, one capable of refusing clearly, serving freely, and giving a faithful yes without betraying what that yes must protect.